2018. After we've been working so much implementing custom blockchain for clients, they were doing the most different things. Blockchain as technology was born to manage financial transactions. And then it started getting adopted to do things that were totally different, like document management, document flow, medical record, insurance handling. And we were doing this thing. We were taking existing platform and make very custom solution, right?
This was a problem that bothered us a lot as we were trying to develop the technology, is that we kept coming back to this fact that every time we had a client that wanted to create a blockchain-based application, they didn't know how to marry this value of the token with this thing that they were trying to secure. And we wound up trying to construct very bizarre solutions. And I think it was in the back of our brains for a while that there has to be a better way to do this. I'm not convinced that we knew what it was. Maybe somebody knew what it was, but we knew that there had to be some kind of way.
In the technical implementation of any solution, even in engineering machinery that do something, people look at the outcome, people look at the external side, but few look inside at the gears, how they move, the mechanics, to understand if they're doing the correct job, they can be optimized, they're doing something that can be dangerous and can get broken. And if a machinery has been invented for a particular use and then try to be adopted for other, there is the need to change it to make it work properly with everything else. And only the engineers that work on that understand that was our case. We would be doing hundreds of other solutions and we knew we need to do something different.
At the same time, we were in an interesting situation as a company, in the sense that here we are doing all these blockchain solutions for clients, and we're learning a lot, we're making relationships with clients, we're making decent money, but we don't have anything that really builds value for Blockchain Zoo itself. We don't have anything, I guess, even in the grander sense to leave our legacy on. And so really, I think it also started to occur to us that we need to put our energy into building something that we can really make our kind of landmark contribution to blockchain, and that is going to solve some of these problems that we've been struggling to solve.
It was late 2018 when we start thinking we have a very fat bank account, as Barton mentioned. We had no value. The company had no intellectual property to give it a value. We did a lot of amazing job for other clients, and we needed to do something. So I decided to say to all the other shareholders, we have three options. We close the company today and we split the money that is in the bank. We close the company 1 year from now, we don't split any more money because it's gonna finish by then if we don't manage it properly. Or we invest everything in creating something amazing, something that's gonna change the way technology, the centralized technology, work.
And so I think all of the shareholders in the company agreed that of the three, the last was the most inspiring option. The question was, what are we going to create? And we went through several iterations on this. So we had, we started from the idea even to take a simpler blockchain, that we already knew, and try to rewrite it or make it just fit what we needed to do a little bit. But even going through this exercise, we encountered so many obvious problems that we had in our previous implementations that we thought, there's no way we're going to take the time to do a rewrite of this code base just to put our name on it and not include all of the different mechanisms, all the different fixes that we wish blockchain technology had.
Myself and Barton come out with the best ideas, not when we shower, because we don't shower together, but during lunch, dinners, when in the moment of relax, we can brainstorm on particular solution. I recall it was still early 2018 when we wanted to fix proof of work. We wanted to fix the mechanics that is behind the Bitcoin blockchain. Because his original author had this dream of one computer, one vote. But the truth is that people start putting many computers together, so it became 1,000 computers power vote against the poor single computer. So we will start brainstorming how to solve this.
And Roberto's right that this was a seed in our brains for a long time. One of the things that we looked at was the Bitcoin blockchain in the ecosystem, and we can't help but notice how centralized it's become to where only a very few hands really hold the power over that blockchain, which is the opposite of what the dream of blockchain decentralization is supposed to be. And so even back then, we were playing with a lot of different ideas for how do we attack this problem at the technical level, at the economic level, whatever it is that pushes this back out to really be a consortium of small people who are treated fairly by the network.
As this is one of the key of decentralization, and decentralization is the new age of the information technology age that we are entering, right? First, everything has been digitized. Music from an analog support became digital, and communication and video, movies, and now there was the issue how to manage these digital assets, right? And because if I have an MP3 file, I can give a copy to everybody and there are 10 copies of the MP3 file. But a piece of art that is digital, how can have a single owner? With the blockchain, if I give Barton my Bitcoin, I don't have the Bitcoin anymore. So I can create singularity on a decentralized system in a digital world, which is amazing, right?
So, to my recollection, and he can fill in the story in more detail, at some point, Roberto came to me. He started coming to me and talking about this idea that he was increasingly excited about, which I thought was not going to work. And it was this idea of, what if you could measure not the financial value of people's coins on the network? What if you could prove that people are actually running the computers, doing all the work that they're supposed to do? Or what if you could validate that they're being good network participants? He was getting more excited about this idea. I was terrified because I didn't know how we're going to build this thing or if this is what we're going to stake our game on. But it turned out to be more plausible than I first thought.
See, because being born in the moment of the evolution of the information era, and I remember when first the internet came out, people thought it was a useless thing. Sending an email was a headache. A fax was much easier to send out because with the email you need to start the computer, load the program, connect the modem to ISP, and then after you send the email, always you phone call the other person to ask did you receive the email, right? Now there is a era of decentralization and the tool being blockchain, but there are also others, but mainly blockchain. We need to solve the problem of scaling. We need to solve the problem of a centralization in a decentralized system, right?
So how we deal with this problem, I think, to us is almost the key obsession, which is that society has, like Roberto said, become increasingly digital, and we're pro-digital, we love it. But while it's become digital, it's also become increasingly centralized. And even the first few attempts to really decentralize technology, like Bitcoin, for example, have themselves tended towards becoming centralized. So we really, really wanted to think deep and figure out, is there some way at the technical level, as long as we're going to attack this kind of problem, that we can really push decentralization and really create a network that's not going to succumb to the same force? And that kind of took us in the direction we're trying to go.
Yeah, and then from the dinner spent talking how to solve the problem with the current blockchains in terms of making sure that they're in fact decentralized and democratic, they can scale to support the mass usage that in the next future there will be. And looking that a lot of people was collecting millions of dollars just coming out with the silly idea to be implemented in one of those basic blockchain. There was no real innovation. There was innovation in use cases, but there was no innovation of the technology that these use cases need. And in fact, a few only did a few steps further, creating a different kind of consensus or things like smart contract in Ethereum blockchain.
In fact, to a large extent, people got stuck on smart contracts. Smart contracts being these ways that you can code your own program and run it on the blockchain. And once this idea came around, most people who were interested in building on blockchain really just ran with it. To them, that was the be-all, end-all. And people forgot about the foundation, the basis of the technology. But if you don't solve these problems of properly distributing the responsibility, if you don't solve these problems of scale, then ultimately you still wind up with a platform that only is going to be run and managed by a couple of people in the top level. And so really the problem that needs to be solved in our view is much lower down.
In fact, I recall talking about smart contract that we're talking about a large institution like banks are adopting this technology to try to address their problems and solve them. And for example, a large blockchain that uses smart contract where all this company manage millions of dollars in finance on the smart contract. And at a certain point, somebody created the crypto kitties, small cats that are cryptographically created that you can marry and have a particular baby. People went crazy for it. And everybody started playing with the crypto kitties, locking the full blockchain. It was taking hours to get a small processor running because the scaling problem wasn't solved, right?
And so the scaling problem is another one of those big problems that confronts the whole blockchain world right now. Is people have trouble figuring out how you're going to make a network trustless, so no computer has to trust anybody else, but also to scale, so that as you add more computers to the network, you can handle more people without needing the computers to trust each other. And this is one of the things that in the back of our brains, as we worked our way up towards this decision we took to start building this new technology, was also very prominently featured, in that we were spending a lot of time thinking about how you actually solve this problem.
In a decentralized world, it's also hard to make all the parties agree. In a network where many parties are equal, in front of a decision, there is no leader that tells them what to choose. So the key part in a decentralized system is what they call it consensus, the way that all the parties, all the servers in the network agree to make the same decision. And this is the key bottom part that need to be addressed for systems that are not related to finance, for example. There are attacks that can be done on current system, and they've been performed as well, where people can create a way to make all the nodes decide that his rewriting of the blockchain is better.
So, for all of these reasons that we've discussed, the problem with centralization, the problem managing these financial, non-financial assets, the problem of, the scalability, for all these reasons, we really, really thought, man, our legacy should be to create a blockchain, to create a piece of technology that makes serious inroads on these problems, that doesn't stop at the smart contract level and kind of leave it to the rest. We really, really wanted to go to the bottom and figure out how this stuff is actually going to come together, how it's actually going to create a solution that's more acceptable to people, that fixes these problems. And so the next question was, how?
What? There was something that was building up in my brain since time after all the implementation we did for our clients, looking at the issue that were there, looking at the problem or the security issue that they were there, how to solve them. And it would be a matter not to measure finance or cost, which all the blockchain today base their security on, how expensive it would be to make an attack, to the care that all the nodes have toward what they're protecting. Because medical records, for example, have no financial value, but if a consortium of hospitals really care to protect them, they're very well protected. So the participation in the protection was the key on how protecting the data.
This was an idea that I had a lot of trouble with at first, because I said, great, it sounds fantastic. How you make it work? Blockchains have this thing called Sybil attacks, right? So a Sybil attack is where somebody pretends to be 1,000 entities and therefore takes 1,000 votes in the voting process if you want. And in other blockchains, this is solved with money. And so we said, because if I have $1,000, it doesn't matter if I'm 1,000 people. I can be one person with $1,000 or 1,000 people with $1, but my vote is the same. And so I was very skeptical at first that we could just measure participation. And it took me quite a while to become convinced this was an idea worth trying to solve.
See, because as Barton mentioned, finance is tangible. Participation is opinionable. It's not something that can clearly be measured. And this is the issue with visionaries, like the moment that I had. You have a vision, but you don't really know how you solve the problem. So in the discussion with Barton, I was so convinced that this could work. And trying to say, no, yeah, but it works. And Barton says, well, no, And Barton started making a lot of experiments. We start thinking at the beginning that the opinion of every node on all the other nodes participate was something to address. But we realized that was an easy way to attack the blockchain.
We tried all kinds of variations. Like he said, specifically, I tried all kinds of variations. I sat down and tried, okay, what if the nodes vote on each other like this? And what if they're put under this kind of restriction? What if one guy votes on two guys, and whether they vote correctly, they can prove that he voted incorrect, and all these complicated mechanics to try to address this problem. And every single time we ran into something which is probably obvious to the high people in cryptography and decentralized systems, but we had to come to the conclusion ourselves, which is that anywhere that you depend on a node's opinion, that opinion can be made to be whatever that guy wants, and he can abuse the network. So opinion is not good enough to measure the participation of these computers.
We had to find a way to have a tangible measurement for participation. And at the same time, we had to also include in the solution that we were deciding to build a lot of other things that we dreamed that were there when we were building solutions for our client using other platforms. We wish the platform could take care of this and that, because in real use case, in real world use cases, it's not just a matter of sending Bitcoin here and there. You really need to comply with regulators. You really need to comply with needs of flow, procedural flow, and blockchain are not built for that. So that was something else we needed to include in our project.
And so we got around to, there is a kind of a key moment in this process when Roberto had laid out this challenge to the company that he stated earlier, like we should just build everything. We should, risk everything and try to build something fantastic. And we wound up, the two of us and one of our other close associates called Mr. Stefano Grigio, also from Italy. And we went to Thailand for a week to do a brainstorming session on this problem. And the idea was that we wanted to walk out of this week and fly back to Bali and have the whole picture in our brains of what we're actually going to commit our resources to building in the next months.
The challenge was this. The challenge was, should we just take what we are comfortable with and we know and rewrite it to have our own intellectual property on the code so we can do what we want and we don't depend on the license of somebody else? Or we create something completely new, making a longer-term investment? And we were battled between the two things to the point that we think we may do both. So in the short term, we have something to work with, or we do just one, or we do the other. But funny enough, as Barton mentioned earlier, when we are set to do just the rewrite, we realize that at this point we should also add the functionality we want.
This is maybe a feature of us or maybe a sickness. It's hard to say, and it still hasn't played out completely, that we kind of reached a decision that we're going to do the simpler, more conservative path, that we're going to rebuild this technology that we already know. And we started to say, well, as long as we're rewriting it, maybe we can tweak this to be a little better. Well, maybe we can tweak that to be a little better. Well, certainly we don't want to recode all of this knowing that it's going to change and that it's not the way that we want it to work. And before long, during the week, we had set out a few large-scale changes that had transformed the vision of what we wanted to create, far beyond the thing that we had modeled it on before. And we just couldn't help ourselves. But I think we wound up with a better idea because of it.
So as me sitting as a CEO of the company, and let's not forget, it's a company that is not huge, but we have 50 people plus or minus working on. the decision has been, okay, no more project for client, let's close sales, let's take all the money we have in the bank and invest them into create this new technology. So we need to take a developer, they're working on the project, deliver the project, and slowly put them on what we are doing. And it's been an interesting step. First, back from Thailand, we took the 4 best developers we had and started to explain them our idea. And they immediately went to start coding to test if our concept were actually working, right?
So when we got back from Thailand, we took a few developers and we sat them down in a room and we said, look, you guys have been doing great work for us on these client projects. This isn't the only thing that we want to do. And we explained them this set of brainstorming and insights that we had. And we kind of laid out the challenge like, do you guys think that something like this could work, that you could build it? You know, have you learned enough about blockchain working with us that you think you can try? Let's try a prototype. And so the guy said, okay, sure, we try a prototype. And we set them to work for a couple of months going to build this prototype, which involved some of the structural changes that we had proposed while we were in Thailand, just to see if it works. And after a few months, I think we were pleasantly surprised, yeah?
I was shocked to the speed that we're going to see results coming up. And let's understand that the ecosystem of a blockchain is so wide that there are so many pieces that need to be coded. So we had people trying to start working on a piece, on another, that were not connected together, but we could see things coming along. Leaving unsolved some key issue of what we wanted to do. So it was really a choice made on faith that we will come out eventually with the key solutions. And, ready also to say and ethically admit that we failed, if that was the case, to come along. So it's been quite an interesting choice, right?
So as we were impressed with the quality of this prototype the guys had done, several of the hard parts, it really seemed to look like we're actually going to work. We came to this other crossroads sometime in June of 2019, which is although we had already committed not to take new client projects, we were still working on trying to develop a few. And those projects during that time, the client at the time just kind of disappeared on us. They stopped paying the work, they stopped paying their own salary. And so suddenly everything that we were doing, all of the other developers in the company didn't have anything else to do. And we had to decide, okay, do we put these guys to make more money, or do we jump all in on this thing?
So we had about 25 developers now working full-time in implementing all the pieces of this blockchain in a process that was also about learning the mechanics while coding them. Let's say that in the moment that we are, it's not easy to find the developer that have the concept of a decentralized system in their brain, that know how to model code, architect code, or implement solutions that work in a decentralized manner. So we had the luck to have all these developers that already had blockchain experience, but to a certain level. We were bringing them down and teaching them the low-level aspect of blockchain.
And it's worth to mention at this point in the story that despite having, say, a prototype in development for 3 months and putting all of our developers on this thing, despite the very core insight, the very core seed of the idea being that we wanted to have some kind of proof of participation in the network, we had not solved how this was going to work. Around this time, I personally was still awake night and day trying different ideas and proposing them to Mr. Roberto and Stefano Grigio. What if we work like this? What if we work like that? And it really wasn't, I think, until maybe July of 2019 that we had the first tangible idea that we all thought, okay, maybe this is going to work.
And it's in a genius way that I will give merit to Barton, but it also came from all working together that we found a way to measure love. To measure the love that each node has for the data that they're storing in the blockchain and they need to protect. So we tangibly measure the participation of the network, making it incredibly more secure, the one protected by money. Because people can find money everywhere. There is a way to protect things from an external source of the blockchain or an internal source of the blockchain, as data, for example.
And it's worth to emphasize, based on our discussion earlier, that people these days throw around the word prove very, very loosely. So when somebody says, I proved this has been proved, and you go look and it hasn't. So I want to emphasize that the work that we put in was to make this not a matter of opinion. What the blockchain measures and reaches consensus on about each node is not the opinion or the idea or like a good estimation. It's really a proof that those computers were doing the work they're supposed to do for the network at that time in a way that we don't know anybody else who's attempted to measure those kind of details. And so that became the linchpin of our consensus algorithm that we developed for the new technology.
Another important part that erroneously never being addressed by other blockchain is that the blockchain is given by the network. If a blockchain has 5 nodes, it's very easy to attack. It's very easy that those 5 nodes are managed by a single person. And another issue that erroneously is not being addressed by pretty much all the other blockchains that are there is the fact that a blockchain is made by many nodes, many servers that support the blockchain. They need to be a lot. If a blockchain has only 5 nodes, it can be easily attacked, or maybe the 5 nodes belong to the same person, so it's fully centralized. But most blockchains don't reward the node for running and making the blockchain. They only reward those accounts that create new blocks. And usually, because it's a matter of finance to be the winner, it only happens that just a few accounts, a few nodes are rewarded for being part of the blockchain.
This was a really big problem that we want to address, and it's one of those ones that to us was the elephant in the room, in the sense that while to us it seems like one of the biggest underlying problems that prevents real decentralization, to most others it seems like they're content to go and focus on other things and not even look at this fact that the real decentralization of the blockchain doesn't come from 10 or 20 nodes that create all the blocks and then they tell all the others. The real decentralization comes from, or I should say, the censorship resistance of the blockchain comes from the fact that you have thousands of nodes that are all rebroadcasting to each other, and all of them have a chance to include a transaction in the blockchain history. And we wanted to make sure we solved this with our consensus algorithm.
Every node has an opinion. So blockchain is divided between those that create the blocks, so decide what transaction are included in the block, what information included in the block, and those that verify that those blocks are valid and those blocks are, the transaction included are valid, okay? So if the majority of the node decide that the blocks are not valid, they reject it, right? Blockchain reward the creators, but don't reward the validators, which is the most important job, because adding transaction, okay, what is the big deal? But making sure that they're valid, that's the key of the security on a blockchain.
So as we move forward on this thing, I would say that we started to get more antsy after a while, which is we had put a lot of good work into this technology. We'd put the full team on it, and we started to wonder, like, okay, so when do we actually have something that we can show people? When do we actually get to test if it's real, test if it works? And we started planning the sequence of releases that we actually wanted to do for the blockchain and to actually test this thing. And the first release that we started to plan was, how do we want to do an alpha release? And there's a lot of interesting details around how we arrived to what the alpha release ended up being.
Obviously, before giving the software to the public, we need to make sure that it's solid and it's stable and it works, right? While we implement and put together the pieces, we have finally something working. We start thinking, where do we run a mini blockchain to do our test? To see the runs in a small computer, see the runs with bad communication. So we purchase a lot of $20 Raspberry Pis, which are mini computer boards. And we start installing the blockchain node in these and running in-house a mini blockchain to test our software.
So this was our very first attempt at alpha network, as we wanted the developers to see. Until now, they had been running a couple nodes on their computer and maybe trying to connect them inside the same computer. But we needed to see this thing running on a real network. And so we got a lot of Raspberry Pis and we wired them all together, and we put a node of the blockchain on each one, and we had them start talking to each other. And immediately things started breaking left and right, which we knew was going to happen because that's what happens whenever you go up a step like this. But yeah, it was very amusing at our office to have kind of a server room with a bunch of guys in and out, all like testing a thing and then going to make sure the computers are working. You know, it was a very animated time to see how this thing is going to live and breathe.
But as you can see, we are very excited about technology, the advancement of technology, fixing the core problem, preparing something for the future where people can run the centralized system in a safe and functional way. But unfortunately, the public is not interested in the engine of a car. They look the shape of the body of the car, they look the interiors, they look the computer functionalities in the car. While we are building engine, we needed to have the world to see the work we are doing and appreciate it. And as a computer geek, this part is harder than the coding of the software. We tried to start branding, bringing the name out, but we got zero attention from the world.
Well, we didn't know that we were going to get zero attention at the beginning, but we learned this the hard way over many, many months, which comes from a lot of factors, and we've had to wrestle with exactly what those factors are to understand a little bit what the public perception is and who are the people who are interested in blockchain. What are they interested about blockchain? How do we message to those people? And it's a thing that, in all honesty, we still try to figure out. I think our brains are not on that level and that particular topic. But still, we developed a lot of nice content that describes ourselves. As soon as people are interested, there's thousands, hundreds, I should say, of very nice videos, resources, white paper, everything to learn about what we've done.
In fact, writing the technical document, the white paper, was a very key aspect for us. We started putting down all the concept and all the problem and the solution we find for this problem on a document that started growing in size, became 100 pages, 150 pages. And looking back to this craze of ICO, initial coin offering, there is a little bit of a pun from IPO for what happened in the stock market. People end up collecting millions of dollars with just 2 pages. They call it white paper, but truthfully it's just a brochure. How fair is that?
And so I think we had this funny problem when we came to do our white paper, because most sane technologies are either, like Roberto said, just a pamphlet that says the technology and they hope to raise a lot of money, or if it does solve a real technical problem, they focus on one technical problem and they write up the description, and it takes a few pages to say what it is. For us, we felt the need to detail all of the different meaningful modifications that we had made to previous incarnations of this technology. And as we started to list them and we say, okay, this needs to be clear, okay, we need to explain better, this really ballooned into a lot of technical material describing things that we didn't expect people to be familiar with from other blockchains, even at the technical level.
So, one more time, our attempt to communicate to the world our amazing job end up creating something that very few people will read because they're interested in the technology. So we were going ahead now at the same time with two challenges. One is to get the blockchain to actually work properly, debug, and have a nice user interface, a nice wallet, work in many nodes. And on the other side is start getting attention to the world. And our approach is to make a lot of explanatory video, but always focusing ourselves on the technological aspect. What is that interests people? That's the question.
So one of my answers to this question, which in retrospect was probably not the correct answer, but it was one that I focused on a lot, and I still focus on a lot, because I'm a developer. I'm a very technical person. And to me, what makes something real is to see the source code, to be able to touch it and feel it, to be able to understand it. So this was one of the reasons that I was very excited to push our alpha network to the next level. In fact, not long after starting the Raspberry Pis, we already hit limitations with what we could learn with this little setup, and we needed to move to a bigger setup. We wound up renting like 100 servers and 10 different data centers scattered across the world, and starting to run the blockchain on all of these computers to make it even a more real simulation of how it was going to work.
So we advance with the technology, and looking at the past, it's also true that most of the ICO were just proposing an idea. They were saying, give us the money, we build for you the technology. We started in what we thought was an ethical approach in saying, we invest to build the technology, we get the technology ready, and now you can support us in making it popular, in making it functional, in implementing use cases on top of it. And so we realized that this approach has difficulties. That's why we need your help in making ZooBC known, right?
Because we really do have confidence that of all the different projects and technologies that exist out there, we've gone a step further than a lot of what's out there. So there's very specialized things that are still better to use smart contracts, but there's a lot of common use cases that you don't need smart contracts to solve. In fact, they create 100 more headaches than they bring you a value. And for those things, you can just have a common technological base that has all these other nice properties that we've been engineering. So we think it's, we put the risk to engineer this thing on the assumption, which we still hold, that once people understand how this thing works and what it does, then they're going to realize that it has a high value and they're going to be interested in it.
So let's sum up what we did and how we got there. We start thinking that a base protocol that is not based on financial and external sources to determine the security of the blockchain was needed. And we did succeedingly implement this proof of participation, measuring with facts the participation of the node and making the blockchain way more secure, I'm ready to say, compared to the existing one. But that's not all. We start also working on key aspects of the blockchain that allow to comply with regulators to solve KYC problem. Some are, for example, Barton can tell us.
So one of the things that we had the idea of was countries now, many of them support government-issued EID and digital signatures. The blockchain is also secured by digital signatures, and these two things seem like a match made in heaven. The problem is, the blockchain uses a different kind of digital signatures than the countries recognized in the IDs that they issue. And so we thought to ourselves, really, Roberto had this idea spontaneously one day, and from then forth it became gospel in our work. Why don't we let somebody use the digital ID they get from the government to sign their transactions on the blockchain, thus making any action they take on the blockchain automatically legally binding in their home court?
As an option, people can still use the original blockchain signature or other signature that they trust more, having different kind of addresses in the blockchain to mimic their Ethereum address, their Bitcoin address, or other things. But this is not all. For example, when you transfer something, is a title, a property, a digital asset, or a coin to somebody else in any other blockchain, this person finds this thing in their wallet automatically. Regulators want, for example, the recipient to accept the reception of a digital asset, a title, the ownership of a house, for example. So ZooBC implement the possibility to authorize incoming transaction from the recipient address.
And there are other things as well. One day, I think also Roberto had the idea that we should have a native escrow functionality that exists in the technology. So in other blockchains with smart contracts or something, already I can set up a system where there's an automatic condition for whether funds go from one person to the other person, but the vision of what those conditions can be is restricted to being inside the node of the blockchain. It's not so easy to say, just hand that power to another person. So we implemented one from scratch where another person or another server can be the decider and can manage a normal escrow of, say, that manages a trade between two people.
When in other blockchain a normal transaction says what to transfer, to who, and the transaction is submitted, ZooBC transaction have the option to add this information. Who authorized this transaction, which is a third account, so it's the sender, the recipient, and the person authorizing, or the software, the computer, and the instruction based on what is the item they authorize. Instruction that can be read by a human, a notary, a lawyer, a court, whatever, a government official, or by a computer based on the data that are taken from particular sources. Transaction can be approved or rejected.
So we have these and many others that we could spend many hours to explain to you all of the different little things that we've added.
I will do.
We really started, so the challenges we faced were making sure we document each of these things in our growing white paper, making sure we start to implement and test all of these things on now our alpha network of 100 computers, which these guys are working on, making sure you can access all of these features from multiple kinds of wallets, one that goes on your phone, one that goes on your browser, one that's a browser extension, making sure it plugs in via a hardware wallet to manage your private key, making sure you can inspect the history of all these things on a block explorer. And before you know it, we had a huge pile of work for all these developers to do.
For example, another interesting transaction type is the liquid transaction, which means that you pay or you transfer ownership of something based on the process of time. A simple example, you have insurance for your car, which has a budget, and only when you start the engine of your car or you go out of your garage, you start paying the insurance. As soon as you park your car back in your garage, stop paying the insurance. This is the concept of the liquid transaction, and we included. But every time we create a new transaction that does these amazing things, we need to have a visualization in the Explorer for people to see the transaction, the interface in the wallet to submit this kind of transaction, and so on and so forth, right?
In fact, one of the largest things like this that we did is we really wanted to play with the idea of governance, which is kind of a buzzword in many blockchains, and many of them do it superficially. And we wanted to give it a try with these transaction fees on the blockchain. So blockchains have this problem that if the transaction fee is one coin and the coin's worth $100, then it costs me $100 to send $5, and I never would. And if the coin is worth, 0.0001 cents, then it's practically free to send a transaction, and I send them all day until I've destroyed the network. So these need to remain balanced against the price of the token, otherwise it fights against itself. We decided to let node operators vote on this in a particular way to set this fee to what they think is actually appropriate for the network at the time.
And again, this is a more user interface, more settings to do. And we were getting ourselves taken by all this functionality, and I promise you there are many others that we are not mentioning now, but you can find in our white paper if you have the patience to read, or among all the videos that are in our YouTube channel. The issue is that we wanted to go beta. We want a testnet and a beta version that everybody can download and run nodes, download the wallet, and start testing. For this reason, we need to put a stop on adding more things, which gonna be added only after the beta is released.
So in fact, that's one of our major objectives right now, is to take all of this work that we've done, that we've tested on this 100 nodes alpha network that still we control, and start to actually run a test with the public with nodes that you control. And very soon from us, you'll be able to find resources on where you can learn how to download the software and plug in your computer to this network and start earning the coins and see how it's going to work when we actually have the full thing launched. Find us bugs if we have problems, find problems in the user interface, all just to make sure that this thing is going to be the most useful and practical that it can be for everybody when it's actually running as a public network.
So if you have already thought about a use case that ZooBC can address and help in your solution, contact us, because soon you want to be able to start implementing a test application, so that in the moment that the mainnet, the official blockchain is released, you can just deploy your application that runs perfectly. If you run a node in the testnet, you're also gonna earn a lot of coins that you can use for your application. And you can also be one of the faucets that gives around to other developers the token to do experiments. So be there and try it and help ZooBC to become known and popular between the community.
So sometime in this period, as we're coming up to releasing the beta a few months ago, we really released what we would call version 1.0 of the white paper, which is something we went forward through quite quickly. So we spent a lot of time tweaking and developing the white paper. And I think the latest one out there is not even 1.0, it's 1.2 or 1.3 or something like this, as we've continued to add to it over time. But now there's a very nice, well-illustrated and very complete technical document that describes all of the stuff that we've done. If you want to, which I think if you want to see the kind of work that's in there, all the thinking that's gone into it, then please, we encourage you to check it out.
We also have put online the wallet, the Explorer, all connected to what is going to be the testnet. I'm sure in this video that you're watching, down on the description, there are all the links to try the online wallet, to request some token, to try all these functionalities, and then to download the node in order to run your node and start implementing application and start earning coins to run the application. The Genesis block of the testnet is going to be prepared and then released by August 2020. So be there or be square. Or be...
This is also only kind of a test for us in the sense that we're going to do a kind of a funding sale to release this technology, the mainnet, which is radically different from the way that people have done ICOs in the past. And it's a sort of a complex process and the tokenomics that go into it. But suffice to say that there's going to be some people who have the unique opportunity to be there at the start of the blockchain and earn the most of the new tokens that it's going to produce in the future and have the first access to build these kind of applications and use them and control the supply. And so
many blockchain create 1 billion coin at day zero. With the Genesis block, with the first block, there is already 1 billion coin that are distributed among few people that pretty much become the wealthiest and control the blockchain. Bitcoin, though, and Satoshi Nakamoto's idea, which was cool, was to create zero coin and giving people nodes so that these nodes can create blocks and give them as a reward the new coins, making sure that the full economy is distributed among all the participants. Obviously, day zero in Bitcoin, there were a lot of coins coming out, and it was a good moment to be there. ZooBC act in the same way. The first node, the first account in the Genesis block are going to be collecting new coins.
So we didn't want to start a network with any new coin. We're not selling people an asset that we're promising to them is going to exist. What you have the opportunity to get when you start in the ZooBC Genesis block, when we launch the mainnet, is the opportunity to have one of the first computers that contributes to the network. Whether you actually fulfill this opportunity by running your computer and keeping it online according to the mechanics we described, which prove that your computer is online and participating with the network, that's up to you. And whatever coins that you are able to take because you've proven that to the network is also up to you. So we don't sell you an asset, but there's an opportunity here to be one of the first and collect the most if you participate.
As the basic of proof of participation is the fact that people start participating from day zero, and it's a variegated amount of people from everywhere in the world, people that don't know each other, people cannot collude to be together in planning an attack, let's say, to themselves at the end, because they will be the blockchain. It's important to us that the participation on the block zero, on the Genesis block, is fulfilled. So we really need the help of people that care about decentralization, people that care about advancing technology, to be there at day zero with one account in the Genesis block of the mainnet. you can start testing with an account in the testnet for now.
In our perfect world, because when a thing starts centralized, it's hard for it to become decentralized. And this is a trend we don't like in modern blockchain technologies. Increasingly, the idea has become, oh, well, we're going to start by owning all of it, and slowly, over a few years, we'll give out little bits of our control until we don't control it anymore. Just a big promise. We want to start the opposite way from this. We want to launch the mainnet with 1,000 or more different people who don't know each other all over the planet, contributing to this thing to make sure that from the beginning, none of them have the power to collude or modify this network. And that's the object of the sale that we're trying to execute.
For the real love of decentralization, right? The economy has to be distributed from the zero and is in the hand of the public, because once the project is open source, people can download nodes. We have no control over the blockchain. We are going to fork this and have one version we can provide service and sell to a consortium of hospital insurance for business purposes. And one fork, there is the public version that is open for everybody to use, to create project and resell, make money of it. We want nothing but just offering you support and having you to succeed together with us. Yeah.
And that's the real object, I think, with any new technology platform like this is we want to build a platform that helps everybody succeed together. You know, we don't just want to take a bunch of money on this and run away. We have future visions for other, even more radically different kinds of decentralized technology, challenges to smart contracts, ways to separate political decentralization from structural decentralization. We have a lot of big ideas. At the same time, we are huge proponents of decentralizing the economy, decentralizing business and websites. We want this tool that we put out in the world to be used by many real people to build actual applications that help give their businesses the kind of decentralized trust that we think the next future economy is going to expect.
For this reason, we have a long-term plan. What we outline now is a 10-year plan of keep growing and implementing this technology, ZooBC, to a level that today will be hard to be understood and appreciated, but doing the necessary step to get there probably allow us to pivot based on what the market needs, what the level of decentralization is, and at the same time give the public the possibility to appreciate each step. So every 2 years is going to be a new release. Now, 2020 is the first version of ZooBC, very similar to all the other blockchain, nothing special. In 2 years, we're going to see how the centralized application and smart contract and other things can be run.
So in fact, I would say in our push to redesign the bottom layer, we've caught up now to, I think, where some blockchains were in around 2015. We've added a lot of stuff that weren't in those blockchains at the time that modernizes them in some ways, and some that are not available in any blockchains today. But they don't reach the maximum height of our vision for where we think the future of this technology is going to go. With your support and with the blessing of luck in the public and everything else, we hope to continue taking future strides into what can be accomplished to push the edge of decentralization, and all of these technologies enable people to build a real decentralized economy in the future.
So now to wrap up and close this video, I think the call to action is this. You can contact us. You can have a Zoom call with us, explain how you can help and contribute and what help you need from our side. Please look at the links in the description below the video and download the white paper, distribute them around. You want to become an ambassador that promotes ZooBC and have one of the first place in the row of the promoters, let us know. There are a lot of opportunity for everybody. Don't be shy, use your brain. We know that you can help and
we have a lot we want from you. You can win bounties from us for fixing the code, for spreading the word. You can be one of the founding members of the new blockchain and take all the coins that come with that. You can take all kinds of things from us, and you can have a new platform that you support to build your business of the future. And you can contact us and have our support as the experts who created the technology to help you build it. For all these reasons, we encourage you, contact us, check out our technology. participate in our beta release. Look out for the mainnet release that we plan to do. And yeah, we hope to build the decentralized future with all of you together.
Thank you for watching, for your patience. Like the video, subscribe to our channel, and stay in touch.